Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us this week for this week's edition of TV6 Investigates Talk. And this week, we're going to be talking specifically about a recent announcement from the Iowa Attorney General, Brenna Bird. She announced that they are starting a cold case unit in the state. Something that a lot of states have, Iowa doesn't have. And so, Matt, can you talk to us a little bit about what this unit's going to do?
Yeah, sure. Iowa used to have a cold cases unit many years ago, and it sort of fell apart, and for whatever reason. But Brenna Bird, the Attorney General, said, this is a task force, a unit that's really needed in this state. There are 400 unsolved homicides right now in the state of Iowa. Wow. Dozens and dozens of those are in Scott County. So she got the legislature to set aside about $500,000 to fund the office, and that's going to pay for 3 full-time investigators who will work on nothing but cold cases, plus a prosecutor. So when they catch these bad guys, there's somebody who's devoted to just getting them in jail.
Wow.
Yeah, cool.
That's really cool. And so you said there's 400 cold cases right now, and you mentioned a lot of them are in in Scott County. And so how are they going to start working on these? Because obviously some of these go back, decades.
Great question. They do go back decades, some even from the 1930s and 40s,
wow.
Including some of those in Scott County. Now, the AG's office said that that all cases are on the table, but obviously cases that have more promising leads, that might have new evidence, that have witnesses still alive, some of those cases are probably going to take priority over the coldest of cold.
Yeah.
So they want to solve these things. So they're going to try to take on cases where they can capture the killer and have a high likelihood of success.
Right. Got to imagine with some of these, especially that are so old, that technology is so new now that hopefully they can use some new technology. Maybe I think she talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons the task force is being put together is because they want to be able to help local law enforcement deal with these cases. In a lot of these counties, it's agencies where it might just be a few officers, heck, even one officer on a staff.
Right.
And that's not an agency that's equipped to open cold cases and start investigating these things. Right. So I think the state agency, the state task force, the cold case task force is going to be there to work in conjunction with the local law enforcement to bring them resources that they might not otherwise already have. Whether that's technological or, kind of some shoe leather out in the community, working witnesses or sources. Those kind of things are what this unit is going to do. And again, they stress over and over again that it's in conjunction with local law enforcement. They're not going to come in and take over a case. They want to hear from local cops about what cases are important, where they're at on these cases, and how best this team can get involved and help.
Yeah. And so you got a chance to talk to Scott County Sheriff Tim Lane a little bit about it. He was at the press conference, and he spoke to you a little bit about some of the various cases that we have in Scott County.
You're right. I asked him if there were cases that would be good candidates for this task force out of Scott County. He said absolutely. But he said some of these cases really stick with law enforcement over the years. He remembers cases from before he was in law enforcement, when he was younger, some of these cases that really kind of haunted the community and continue to do so today. So I took a look. There's a database online, iowacoldcases.org. I recommend everybody who's interested in this story to check it out. The AG's office credited this website with sort of being a clearinghouse for cold cases that are all over the state, and it's very thorough. So there's dozens and dozens of them in Scott County. I went back and took a look at some of the cases that I thought might have resonated with Lane, so late 60s, early 70s, when he was probably still coming up. So, one of those cases was Judith Ann Haker. She was an 18-year-old Palmer student. She died on March 6, 1971. She was returning to her home and was beat to death, blunt force trauma to the head, and then strangled so hard that it broke bones in her neck. There had been a strange man around the housing facility, but no one was ever able to find that person or tie that person to her murder. So that's one unsolved case. Leads just went dry, and the case was essentially cold.
Yeah.
So
cold.
Yeah, other more recent cases. I mean, this is one that I remember, and this is definitely on the list too. Was about the Joby Jones case. He was also 16, I think. Was shot May 20th, 2018, I believe. And in that case, he was outside of a convenience store and was struck in Rock Island, 13th and Harrison Streets, and he died. I think maybe a day later. But police have been trying to work that case now for 6 years and have not solved that case either. So a couple of examples of some younger victims, because I think those are the ones that law enforcement said really do stick with them. And I think those are the cases that really pull at them when those when children are involved or there's heinous, notorious murders. And I think that those, you asked about what cases they're going to want to look at, and I think these are probably going to be top of mind.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hopefully, you know, as this, they're taking applications, I think, right now, right? The task force isn't together quite yet.
Correct. The funding for it goes into place next month, so 10 days or so. They're actively hiring right now for those 3 investigators. It won't be a situation where they just take somebody else in the AG's office and move them over to this position. They're hiring new positions. That's not to say somebody in the AG's office couldn't get it, but these are brand new spots, including for the prosecutor. So they're taking applications for those positions now. Somebody in the AG's office will sort of supervise and head up the unit, but it'll act independently and have its own staff.
Well, hopefully, as they get started, we'll start hearing about maybe some cases getting solved and hopefully bringing some closure to families who deserve that closure.
Absolutely. At the press conference, when they announced this thing, they had several surviving family members of victims who had been killed and whose cases had gone cold over the years. And it was really powerful to see them standing behind law enforcement as they were announcing this. You could see some of them were close to tears because this is a chance for them to find that closure, and it's maybe the last best hope for some of these families.
Absolutely. All right, well, you can see this story right now on our TV6 Investigates page on our website and on our news app, and as always, you can see all of the other stories that Matt and the TV6 Investigates team has been working on. That's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us.